Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics and explore fascinating stories from the sources you've shared with us. Today, we're embarking on a pretty chilling journey, actually, into the life and crimes of a figure who cast a long, dark shadow across North America back in the 1920s.
Indeed. We'll be examining the case of Earle Nelson, often called the Gorilla Killer. This individual's brutal methods and frankly prolific murders really shocked two nations. He's considered America's first recorded serial sexual offender.
That's right.
And his violent spree spanned just 16 months, but claimed 22 lives in that short time.
22 lives. In what, just over a year? That sheer speed and the brutality. It's unsettling to even think about. So our deep dive today will trace his path. From a really challenging childhood, through these increasingly disturbing behaviors, to the terrifying rampage that earned him that infamous nickname. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What sort of things come together to create such a dark path?
Well, what really stands out when you look at the sources is how his personal history, and this includes severe head trauma, diagnosed mental health issues, how that intertwined with this clear escalation of violence. It led to a pattern of crime that, for investigators back then was both baffling and absolutely terrifying. We'll explore the unsettling details from the sources you've provided, offering a glimpse into, the making of a monster and the hunt to bring him to justice.
Okay, let's unpack this. His story, according to the sources, begins May 12, 1897, San Francisco, California, born to very young parents. But his early life was marked by just profound tragedy almost immediately.
Yeah, this case is a really stark early example of how devastating early childhood trauma can be. Earle's mother died of syphilis when he was just, 9 months old. She'd contracted it from his father, who then also died from it just 6 months later. So he was effectively an orphan before he could even really form memories of his parents. A huge foundational loss right there.
So he was sent to live with his maternal grandmother, Jenny Nelson. She was 44. Already raising two older children, his Aunt Lillian and Uncle Willis, and that's where he got the Nelson surname. Jenny was apparently very devout, a Protestant, raising the kids strictly on Bible teachings. And Earle, he absorbed it deeply. Sources say he spent hours just reading the Bible alone.
It's interesting, though, because while his grandmother was, deeply religious and apparently loved him, she seemed to overlook some increasingly peculiar behaviors as he grew up. He was apparently very active, doing really strange things like walking on his hands or even on all fours like a cheetah, they said. He'd lift heavy objects with his teeth, but then he'd also just sit in his room for hours, staring blankly. Totally withdrawn, silent.
But it wasn't just being quiet. The sources describe other, much stranger things emerging, like extremely poor hygiene. He rarely bathed, apparently even resisted when his grandmother tried to clean him. And his eating habits were bizarre too. Pouring excessive olive oil on his food, eating with his hands, licking plates clean, and eating something like 4.5 times more than other kids his age.
Wow.
His aunt and uncle, maybe a bit cruelly, teased him, calling him Wild Man of Borneo.
And that constant teasing, that social isolation, it seemed to fuel the severe lack of self-confidence. Drove him further into isolation, spending most of his time down in the basement, still studying the Bible. And then, at just 7 years old, he gets expelled from school for violent behavior, shouting at friends, talking to unseen figures.
Yeah, and he frequently quoted the Great Beast, a character from the Bible.
Yeah.
That's unsettlingly specific for a child.
It really is. That early connection to a darker, sort of apocalyptic biblical narrative, it feels significant looking back.
The sources also paint this picture of San Francisco at the time as, pretty chaotic. High crime rate, epidemics. Earle's family lived in fear, talked about these dangers constantly. But Earle, strangely, apparently found it entertaining.
That's quite a disconnect.
Then at age 10, this horrific accident happens. Hit by a streetcar, dragged 50 feet, severe head injuries, a 6-day coma.
That accident, it feels like a huge pivot point, likely a significant turning point in his mental decline. I mean, he miraculously survived, but the head trauma left him with chronic, intense headaches, cluster headaches, they think, rapid mood swings, short-term memory loss. These neurological impacts must have profoundly altered his personality, made him withdraw even more, except maybe from his immediate family. It's hard to overstate the potential effect of that kind of brain trauma.
Then at 14, his grandmother Jenny dies. That loss leads Earle to drop out of school for good. His Aunt Lillian, she's 22 now and married, takes him in. even though her husband was apparently reluctant.
She seemed to pity him, right? Understood his strangeness made him an outcast.
Yeah, but living with Lillian, his behavior got significantly worse.
How so?
He started peeping at women in the house. Sources say he couldn't control his sexual urges, like he'd masturbate immediately when aroused, and he'd stare intensely at female guests, making them super uncomfortable, so they stopped visiting.
That's a definite escalation, a worrying progression.
And he struggled immensely to hold any job. Lasted no more than 2 weeks as an artist, apparently. He'd either work really diligently or just stand motionless for hours, staring into space, sometimes talking to the sky, or wandering aimlessly for miles around San Francisco at night.
Right. And he was described as what? Not tall, but muscular, with these unusually large, dark hands. That detail comes up later.
Exactly.
His restlessness, these habits, they eventually led him to the Barbary Coast, San Francisco's notorious red light district. That's where he started frequenting bars, encountering sex workers, and at 25, used their services for the first time. Quickly developed an addiction, apparently preferring older women specifically.
And Lillian, she's now worried for a newborn baby, sees his worsening alcoholism, the late-night disappearances. She feared for her child's safety around him. But her arguments with him just didn't work.
So by 1915, he's 18, starts a new pattern, breaking into abandoned cabins to sleep, sometimes stealing.
Right. Eventually gets caught stealing, serves a year in San Quentin prison. But the sources note he was a model prisoner there, always reading the Bible. Got released early because of it.
But upon release, Lillian, quite understandably, told him he couldn't live there anymore. So he becomes homeless again, wandering through LA, petty larceny, multiple short jail sentences. It's this cycle. Restability, then crime, then homelessness. Just couldn't integrate.
Then World War I is ramping up. Earle, using an alias, Earle Fuller, his father's surname, joins the U.S. Army. First assignment as a night guard. Miserable. Complaining about cold, fatigue. Leaves the Army pretty quickly.
Then he tries the Navy, again under a false name, working as a cook this time. But the same peculiar behaviors continue. Reading the Bible alone, talking to himself, those severe headaches, staring blankly. These patterns are just deeply ingrained.
Right. The constant headaches eventually get him transferred to Oliver Hospital. And there, the doctors find more than just physical issues. They suspect something deeper, psychologically. He gets diagnosed with visual and auditory hallucinations. And they also find out he'd contracted both syphilis and gonorrhea from his time on the Barbary Coast.
These findings then lead to his transfer to Napa State Mental Hospital, a specialized psychiatric place. Doctors there diagnose him with hallucinations, paranoid delusions. He's hearing voices commanding him to kill himself or do other things, believing people are trying to poison him. The term schizophrenia wasn't really fully established then, but they labeled him mentally insane. It paints a picture of just profound mental disturbance.
And he was institutionalized for 6 years, 1919 to 1925. During this time, often just sat staring blankly, still reading the Bible, tried to escape 3 times, always caught. But on his 4th try, May 1919, he succeeds, and the staff, maybe just tired of chasing him, didn't pursue.
So with nowhere else to go, he goes back to Aunt Lillian again. She can't house him, but she helps him find work as a janitor at St. Mary's Hospital under another alias, Evan Fuller. It's this recurring theme, isn't it? Despite everything, he keeps getting chances, but the underlying issues just lead to failure every time.
And it was at this hospital he met Mary Matos, another janitor. What's really striking here is the age difference. Mary was 58, Earle was only 22. A 36-year gap.
Wow.
Sources say he was drawn to her gentle, motherly nature, maybe desperately seeking that maternal figure he never had.
Makes sense psychologically.
They married in August 1919.
But this marriage, it was far from happy. Mary quickly realized he was more like a troubled child. Extremely unhygienic, apparently insisted washing only his feet was enough. And fiercely possessive.
Yeah, he'd fly into these terrifying rages, destroy property if anyone, even her own brother, got too close to her. That possessiveness really points to deep attachment issues.
Definitely.
And their sexual relationship was also deeply troubled. Earle apparently had an extremely high libido, was violent during sex, often forced himself on her. When she refused, he'd just masturbate right in front of her, made her deeply uncomfortable, especially being Catholic.
Awful. And their lives became transient too, right? Because of his paranoia.
Exactly. He increasingly believed people were hunting him, trying to poison him. They moved frequently. His untreated headaches came back with severe intensity, impacted his work, even caused him to collapse sometimes.
And then there was a second head injury, a fall downstairs.
Yeah, which worsened his condition even more, made him more volatile, uncontrollable.
So eventually he gets fired, and Mary just Unable to endure the abuse, the constant fighting, asks for a divorce.
He refuses.
Oh.
And then even attempts to strangle her.
Oh my God.
Luckily, Mary escaped and never went back.
Right.
But that domestic violence, it was a clear, chilling precursor to what came next.
Absolutely.
After Mary left him, Earle's life just spiraled.
Yeah.
Heavy drinking, frequenting prostitutes, burned through his savings fast. And then the sources revealed this really dark transformation.
Yeah.
A preview of the terror he'd unleash. May 19th, 1921. He impersonates a plumber to get into the Summer family home.
Right.
Corners 12-year-old Mary Summer in the basement and sexually assaults her. Her screams brought family members down. They subdued him, called the police.
And that incident led to another prison sentence. 2 years.
Yes, and in jail, his bizarre behaviors just worsened dramatically. Pulling out his hair, eyebrows, fighting inmates, screaming at night about seeing faces on the wall.
Just completely deteriorating.
So, unsurprisingly, he gets sent back to Napa State Mental Hospital for 4 more years this time, 1921 to 1925, diagnosed there with dementia and specific occipital headaches.
And then in 1925, he's released again, seemingly improved, compliant with treatment.
Once he's out, he just vanishes.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where he went or what path he'd take. And this, chillingly, is where his true reign of terror begins.
Yeah, looking at the bigger picture now, it's so clear that despite all those years of institutionalization, his underlying issues remained. Or maybe they were even exacerbated by everything he'd been through. His release in 25, it really marked the start of one of the most terrifying, widespread murder sprees in American history. The system, well, it just couldn't contain what he was becoming.
So February 20, 1926, Earle Nelson commits his first known murder. Victim was 62-year-old Clara Newman, a lodging house owner in San Francisco.
The pattern starts here.
Right. He introduces himself as Roger Wilson, pretending to look for a room. As she shows him around, he strangles her.
And after killing her, he moves the body to an empty room and sexually assaults the corpse. This pattern strangulation, then post-mortem sexual assault that becomes his horrifying signature.
And as he left, he calmly told Clara's nephew he'd be back in an hour. But the nephew sensed something was wrong. Nelson seemed agitated. He found Clara's body soon after. Severe bruising on her neck, clothes pulled up, just brutal.
A brutal signature beginning.
Just 2 weeks later, March 2, 1926, he strikes again. Second victim, 63-year-old Laura Bill, another lodging house owner, used the exact same deception to get in.
Then strangled her with a rope so tightly it cut her flesh, drew blood.
Yes, and then sexually assaulted her corpse, just like Clara Newman.
And what's really unsettling is that he always presented himself as well-dressed, right? Often
Yeah.
carrying a Bible.
That juxtaposition is chilling.
The news of these murders spread fast across San Francisco, and that prompted him to pause his activities for a bit. Which shows a cunning side, doesn't it? A strategic pause to avoid detection as things got hot.
It does.
Yeah.
But the pause didn't last long. His third victim was Lillian St. Mary, 63, on June 26, 1926, another lodging house owner, killed using the identical method.
And with the news breaking again, he decides to move, head south to Santa Barbara, California.
This shift, it raises that question about geographical patterns in serial killers, how they move.
Definitely. And in Santa Barbara, July 10th, 1926, he murders Ollie Russell, 53, also a lodging owner, strangulation with a rope, followed by sexual assault.
But this time there was a witness.
Sort of. Another tenant heard sounds from the room, looked through the keyhole, saw a dark-skinned man with a motionless woman. The witness got suspicious, later found the body, called the police. The victim's neck was almost severed. The sheer force involved.
It's just horrifying. 5 weeks later, August 16th, 1926, fifth murder. Mary Nisbet, 52, another lodging house owner, her husband, Stephen, found her in the bathroom. The scene was incredibly violent.
Yeah, the description is awful. Face completely disfigured, teeth broken, head smashed against the wall and floor, shoulders, hips dislocated, and the towel used to strangle her had apparently torn in two from the force.
Stephen Nisbet, the husband, was interrogated for over 40 hours. Police suspected him initially.
Understandable, perhaps. But the consistent MO across all 5 murders started pointing elsewhere. Well-dressed perpetrator, often with a Bible, immense strength, those unusually large hands. It all started to connect.
Witnesses from Mary Nisbet's neighborhood also reported seeing a well-built man with unusually large hands lurking around her house.
That consistency was crucial. It helped law enforcement realize they were dealing with a single, highly dangerous predator.
And that's when the nickname started. The Gorilla Killer. The Strangler. The public was terrified.
Rightly so.
After leaving California, Nelson goes on this broader cross-country spree, hits multiple states in the American West, October 19th to 21st, 1926. 3 murders in 3 consecutive days in Portland, Oregon.
And here, he introduces a new tactic, hiding the bodies, sometimes in closets, sometimes attics. And he started stealing valuables to sell.
This evolution, the concealment, the theft, it points to an evolving strategy, doesn't it? More sophisticated, maybe?
Yeah, perhaps driven by needing money or maybe just wanting to complicate the investigation, buy more time. It shows adaptation.
His next victims came in November 1926. November 19th, he murders his 9th victim. But on that same day, incredibly, a 10th victim, 28-year-old Essie Murray, survived. He lured her into a room, started strangling her, but stopped abruptly when she told him she was pregnant. He fled, apparently in shock.
Wow. That moment of hesitation is such a strange anomaly in his otherwise brutal pattern, a rare glimpse of something else.
It seems so. Essie Murray told police he'd pointed to the ceiling during their conversation, maybe a distraction tactic before he attacked, and her description matched perfectly. Well-dressed, about 170 centimeters, large hands, carrying a Bible. Invaluable testimony.
Absolutely.
But he continued the rampage. Killed 2 more victims in Washington state that November.
Media coverage intensified. Police started meticulously tracing pawned items belonging to the victims. Smart police work for the time.
It led them to a guest house where Nelson had stayed. The owner identified him from the police sketch. Clean cut, always with a Bible, seemed friendly.
And she mentioned he checked out November 29th, left a ring behind.
Yes, which was later confirmed to belong to one of the Washington victims. He told the owner he was heading east and wouldn't be back to the west.
And that police sketch, widely circulated, became the major breakthrough. His Aunt Lillian recognized him, his ex-wife Mary recognized him, even staff from Napa State Mental Hospital, they all provided his true identity. Earle Nelson. The man they were hunting finally had a name.
But despite this intensifying manhunt, Nelson just kept going. Used hitchhiking, trains to travel east, reached Iowa, Missouri. In December 1926, 4 more victims, December 23rd, 27th, 28th, 3 were female lodging owners.
And the 4th. This was a profoundly chilling escalation. An 8-month-old infant boy, Robert Harbin.
Yes, the son of 28-year-old Therese Harbin. He strangled the baby with a diaper after killing his mother.
By the end of 1926, he's confirmed murdered 14 women and 1 infant, targeting an infant. It's just a horrifying leap in his violence, beyond his previous profile. Shows complete disregard for any life.
In 1927, he continues the same grim pattern, luring victims pretending to rent a room, then strangling them. His spree extends through New York, Michigan. His last known U.S. murder was in Chicago, Illinois, June 4th, 1927.
And by this point, he'd apparently accumulated over $10,000 from stolen valuables. That's a lot of money back then.
It is. He then decides to cross the border into Canada, arrives in the Pays, Manitoba.
And Canadian authorities, working closely with U.S. intelligence, were now hot on his trail. The hunt became international.
In Canada, he commits 2 more murders almost immediately. June 8th, 1927, he lures 24-year-old Lola Cowan, a flower vendor, into his room. She was never seen again. 2 days later, June 10th, he murders his 22nd victim, 28-year-old Emily Patterson, a lodging owner. Same method.
Emily Patterson's husband found her body under their son's bed. Head and face battered, neck strangled, signs of sexual assault. Police found a hammer, a knife, and a tuft of Nelson's hair, suggesting a struggle took place. Valuables stolen too: wedding ring, clothes, a Bible, cash.
These 2 quick murders in Canada immediately alerted authorities. They quickly connected them to the guerrilla killer from the U.S.
And then they found Lola Caron's body in a guest house.
Yes, horrifyingly stuffed in a bed. The autopsy revealed just horrific details: multiple broken bones, bitten fingernails.
It's evidence she'd been suffocated by him lying on top of her, then subjected to repeated post-mortem sexual assault.
Yes. The brutality was so extreme, reports compared it to Jack the Ripper's victims.
Unimaginable. So connecting the dots, police tracked him through pawn shops again, where he sold stolen goods.
Right. And a barber remembered cutting his hair on June 10th, the day Emily Patterson was killed. Noticed a head wound Nelson tried to hide.
The net was definitely closing in.
A $1,500 reward was offered for his capture, a substantial sum. And finally, June 16th, 1927, he's intercepted by Canadian police near the Pas, Manitoba, a border town with North Dakota.
And he was just calmly eating a sandwich, only 12 miles from the U.S. border.
Apparently so.
When caught, he identified himself as Walter Wilson, maintained this calm demeanor, denied everything.
Yeah, which initially made police even question if they had the right guy.
But they jailed him, and then he escaped. That same night, this guy was incredibly elusive.
He was. He then boarded a train heading back to the U.S. Unaware that American police, alerted by the Canadians, were waiting for him, he was arrested on the train. And fingerprint analysis, a relatively new but reliable tool, then quickly confirmed his identity. He was, without a doubt, Earle Nelson.
So when confronted with all the evidence, he finally admits his real name.
Yes, but astonishingly, continued to deny the murders. Claimed he was a religious man, couldn't take a life.
He even told the press he only killed on Saturday nights, though he later recanted that.
Right. It raises that question again. Was this true denial? A complete dissociation? Or just a final diluted attempt to control the narrative? Hard to know.
Very hard to know.
Earle Nelson's trial began November 1st, 1927. It was swift, given the evidence. Over 60 witnesses testified. People who saw him at crime scenes, people he spoke to, victims' families who recognized him, an undeniable mountain of proof.
And his defense argued he was mentally insane during the crimes, right? Citing his long history of diagnoses, institutionalization.
Yes, but the court ruled against it. They determined his methods, the deception, the planning, the cunning in avoiding capture, showed a clear capacity for strategic thought.
Which contradicted, at least in the eyes of the law then, a state of total insanity. They deemed him a significant conscious danger to society.
So the trial concluded quickly. November 5th, 1927. Earle Nelson sentenced to death by hanging.
And on January 13th, 1928, Earle Nelson was executed in Winnipeg, Canada. To his last breath, he maintained his innocence, claimed he never murdered anyone.
His final words were reportedly, "I forgive those who have misunderstood me."
That final statement, given the horrific reality of his crimes, it's just a chilling testament to his profound mental state, whether it was delusion, denial, or some kind of twisted self-justification.
After his execution, criminologists analyzed his case extensively, of course. Some speculated that his lifelong obsession with the great beast from the Bible that character believed to bring darkness to usher in light might have deeply influenced him.
Perhaps provided a perverse, twisted justification for his crimes, at least within his own distorted reality.
Its whole tragic narrative. It really forces us to consider that incredibly complex interplay. Early life trauma, severe mental health challenges made worse by physical injury, and then this escalating spiral into just unimaginable violence.
Earle Nelson's story is such a stark reminder that the human mind, when it becomes profoundly unmoored, untreated, it can descend into the deepest depravity, leaving a trail of destruction that just reverberates through history.
We hope this deep dive into the disturbing story of Earle Nelson has given you a clearer understanding of this notorious figure and the horrifying patterns of his crimes.
It's certainly a story that gives you a lot to think about, doesn't it? What aspects of Earle Nelson's life or crimes really stood out most to you? We definitely encourage you to reflect on the insights shared today.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay well informed.